Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Today, I'm going to go over how covert narcissists can fool therapists, because I posted a popular reel of Dr. Salerno and myself to Instagram, to Instagram, but also to Facebook. Got over 1 million views on Facebook, and a lot of people were very upset at me, and even Dr. Salerno, because they were saying, you guys are invalidating victims, and you guys are victim blaming, and you guys are gaslighting. And I'll let you know what we said, but I can guarantee you that's not what it was. But what I had asked Dr. Salerno was, what are suggestions to give a therapist to be able to spot the abuser if there's a couple counseling session? And Dr. Salerno said, well, you would look for collaboration, because many narcissists are not going to collaborate in the session. They're not going to do their homework. They're not going to do as they're told. They'll make excuses. They'll blame shift, etc. And you would think that's not that bad, right? That's pretty accurate a lot of times. Is it accurate 100% of the time? No, as I'm going to go over in this video here. But people are accusing us of victim blaming, gaslighting, being harmful, because they emphasize, no, narcissists will fake collaboration. They'll act like the perfect client. And I said, sometimes they will, yes, but not every time will they do that. And that's the thing. People go into black and whites. And they also didn't like that Dr. Salerno said a simple way to tell. That made them annoyed too. And perhaps that wasn't the best word choice, but again, people go into all or nothing extremes, and I'm going to go into how covert narcissists can fool therapists today. Kat, how are you? I'm doing very well. It's been a good day. Interviewed Grace yesterday. I'll be curious how people receive that. I'll be interviewing another friend of mine on Sunday, hopefully. And I got The Game Exposed next week. And then I'm having Chantel Contarines back on the show as well. So we got a full slate coming up, Kat. But how do covert narcissists fool therapists? Just as I said, covert narcissists want to appear like the perfect client. They want validation from the therapist. They want to be told, you're great, because that's why a lot of covert narcissists will go to therapy to begin with, or even if it's couples counseling, they want validation. They want narcissistic supply, and they want to be able to triangulate you with the therapist. And a lot of times they're going to weaponize what they hear in therapy against you. Or maybe they'll twist and distort the therapist's words and weaponize that against you. Or if you open up in front of the covert narcissist, or any narcissist for that matter, what you open up about will almost certainly be weaponized and thrown in your face later. But that's the reason why covert narcissists usually go. Because deep down, they don't think they're the problem. And people think, oh, narcissists will never go to therapy. Covert narcissists will never go to therapy. Not quite true. They'll go, but they'll go because they think someone else is the problem sometimes. Or they've had a major catastrophe in their life in another area. They don't think their narcissism is the problem. They think something else is the problem. Or they've been court ordered to go. Or they've gotten an ultimatum to go. So in other words, there are narcissists that find themselves in front of professionals a lot, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, because if they're not going to be honest while they're there, if they can't honestly self-reflect, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change at all. Hello, Jolly. Nice to see you as well. Yeah, and a lot of narcissists would never want to go to therapy. And that's why Dr. Salerno said collaboration is key. The narcissist that would never want to go to therapy, when they're there, they're probably not going to collaborate. But the covert narcissist that wants to appear like the perfect client, and they can even have cognitive empathy a lot of times. They can do the homework, appear like a perfect student. And the therapists that don't quite understand abusive relationships, coercive control, trauma bonds, or personality disorders, unfortunately, there are a fair amount of therapists that get fooled. And I hear a lot of people tell me, the narcissist I went to couples counseling with, they charmed the pants off of the therapist. Sometimes literally, even unfortunately as well. But they'll say, oh, they were charismatic, they were charming, and they befriended the therapist, and the covert narcissist was able to recruit them to their side to get them to think the other person's the problem. I've heard that countless times. But also to note, I'm taking these people's words for it too. For all I know, the people saying this, they're actually the narcissist themselves, right? And it's the other person that is the victim and was correct in what they said. But if I don't know the situation, I can't say for sure. I'm just saying what I hear happens a lot. And it does happen. A narcissistic person can charm the therapist and they'll recruit them to their side. And before they know it, they're invalidating the victim even more because they're agreeing with the narcissist. And that's just an obnoxious thing all around. And this is also why I say you don't go to couples counseling with a narcissist or an abusive person because nothing's going to change. It's not going to be helpful because abuse is not a communication issue. Abuse is an abuse issue. And the only person that can work on that is the abuser or narcissist themselves. And Kat says, a lot try to be spiritual, do meditation, etc., but that will never help them then as they've stuck in their own heads and need an outside perspective. I mean, there are certainly a lot of spiritual narcissists out there, and I do see them do a lot of the twisting and distorting of spiritual principles. Absolutely. Mrs. B. Stacy, welcome to the chat as well. Coverts are abusive when they are alone with a person. No one believes the victim because no one witnesses it. Yes, that is something that happens a lot. The covert narcissist will be a completely different person behind closed doors. They'll appear like the perfect client in couples counseling, but it's not until they're home does the covert narcissist start to abuse people. Then they're a completely different person behind closed doors. That's where the gaslighting occurs. That's where the covert abuse occurs. That's where the overt abuse can occur. The belittling, the devaluing, the insults, the put downs, the condescending, the passive aggressiveness, the guilt trips, the silent treatments. That's behind closed doors. They're usually not going to do that in front of others unless they're under the influence. And one of the clues I had said to a therapist to try to figure this out is to see who the more dominant person is, who seems to be more in control when they're in therapy, because often the person who is more dominant and in control is also the abuser. But there's a couple exceptions to that. An exception to that would be the covert narcissist, that they might appear to be a little more subdued in the session. They might appear to be a little more apprehensive, but it's because behind closed doors, that's when that mask comes off. Another exception would be when someone struggles with alcoholism or an addiction and they're not under the influence in the session. You might see a different version of them, a much different version of them in that session than you would when they're under the influence. Big things to pay attention to there. Loving them destroys us. My empathy is my downfall. And so, Kat, this is a very important point you just made. I would say any definition of empathy that involves not respecting ourselves, that involves not being assertive, that involves not having clear boundaries and strong boundaries is a definition of empathy that needs to be amended. Because so often I think what happens is people, they have empathy, they think, but often, unfortunately, what they mean by empathy is, oh, I'll give endless second chances, or I want to see the best in this person because I would want someone to see the best in me, so I'm going to do that for them. Or I'm going to give him a charitable or her a charitable interpretation of what they're doing because I want someone to do that for me. But when it comes to narcissists and other abusers, that kind of mentality will keep you stuck in a cycle of abuse. And that's something that I think a lot of people pride themselves on being that kind of person. But when it comes to narcissists and abusive people, that kind of mentality just is not going to help. It's going to keep you stuck in that cycle. And I don't want anyone who follows me to be stuck in that cycle. So that's why I say, any definition of empathy you also have to have radical self-respect. You also have to have assertiveness. You also have to have boundaries. You also have to be willing to walk away if someone is going to continuously disrespect you, not respect your boundaries, and be abusive, etc. Kat says, I definitely stand up for myself. That's why we'd fight a lot, because I always challenge the narc's behavior in the hope of growth. Waste of time. Right. Waste of time is right. Because as Dr. Simon said, it's not that they don't see, they disagree. And it's not that they aren't aware, They just don't care. A lot of people try to waste a lot of time trying to get them to see. And that's often what couples counseling turns into in the unfortunate circumstance that someone goes to couples counseling with an abusive person. They waste a lot of time trying to get the abusive person to see and then the therapist to see. And unfortunately, the abusive person, they already see it. They're just pretending they don't. And then the therapist, it's hit or miss whether they're going to see it either. But it's a big risk. If you're a victim and you're going into a circumstance like that, and then the therapist or counselor doesn't see it, that can be very painful. That is a very invalidating situation. And then that could absolutely make things a lot worse. Kat says, I blame Lord of the Rings. You can't blame Lord of the Rings, Kat. I've always been on Arwen looking for my Aragon, but men like him don't really exist. There's a guy named, the hell's his name? Men's something or other on Instagram. He had a post that said Aragon is the beacon of masculinity because he has the kind of masculinity that is sorely needed today. And I would absolutely agree with that. I think he's called Man Talks on Instagram. And I totally agree. I think Aragon was a great example of masculinity. And the Lord of the Rings series in general, especially the first three, right? Those were awesome. I think they were so well done. And I think you don't really see too many movies made like that anymore. And I kind of think a lot of that is because people get distracted by social media. Everyone's addicted to their cell phones. And I think that detracts from their craft. Mrs. B says, learning to feel compassion and empathy and not acting on those feelings is the key to maintaining boundaries. Yeah, I agree with that. Learning to feel compassion and empathy and not acting on those feelings. Yes, I think because more than one thing can be true at the same time. You can have empathy and you can feel compassion, but that doesn't mean you should be a doormat or a pushover. That's a big distinction to make. And sometimes people struggle with that, right? They think, oh, if I have compassion, I have to give in. If I have empathy, I have to be a people pleaser and tell them yes, even when I want to say no. Or I have to give them another chance, even when I don't want to. But that's the kind of thinking that gets people in trouble. Kat says, yes, Aragorn is the perfect man. The return of the king, as they say. Great series. And even there are some good examples of it in Game of Thrones as well. And I mentioned, if anyone saw the interview with Grace, there's the series or the scene between Aemon Targaryen and Jon Snow, Jon Snow's uncle, because Jon Snow was also a Targaryen. But he was saying something to him because I'm not sure what preceded it, but Jon Snow, I think maybe this is when he was getting with the wildling, and then his heavy-set friend told the person at the Night's Watch, the guy who was blind, Aemon Targaryen. And he called him over and he said, oh, I heard you did this. And Jon Snow was like, you don't understand what I'm going through. And Aemon was like, wait a minute. I do know what you're going through because my whole family was killed while I was here. And he said, what is duty compared to the love of a woman? What is duty compared to a newborn infant in your hands? Because the duty for him was staying at the Night's Watch. And there comes a choice where you have to choose. There comes a time when you have to choose. And Aemon said, anyone can do their duty when there's no cost to it. It's easy then. But then there always comes a point when doing your duty that it can be difficult and it's hard. And that's when your strength of character is really tested, when it's not easy anymore to stand up. It's not easy anymore to do what you're supposed to do. And I think that was an awesome scene. In fact, anyone who wants to watch it, you can easily YouTube that scene. I can't do it, or this stream would be taken down. But it's an awesome and powerful scene there that I think is awesome. But I think the world is lacking some very good masculine figures at this point. I think a lot of people have, when I interviewed Dr. Taylor Burroughs, she mentioned this, but performative masculinity, I think that can be a problem for people. And a lot of men they would rather be performative than they would be actually living it, like living it and being genuine. They want to show it, not necessarily live it. But back to the covert narcissist and therapy thing. So we don't recommend anyone does that. You don't want to go to therapy with an abusive person because it's just not going to end well. I've never seen or heard of a time when someone goes and all of a sudden everything changed. No, I don't hear that. But unfortunately, sometimes the therapists don't see it, and that's also a problem. But you can't let the covert narcissist cognitive empathy fool you, because a lot of them have learned how to fake it. Speaking of performative masculinity, they fake empathy. They're able to sound like they're saying all of the right things, and they'll look like the perfect client. They'll do all of the work. It will appear like they're collaborating, but they're really not collaborating. They're just putting on a performance, and they're going to get the 3 A's from it: attention, admiration, and acknowledgement, and they're going to get the therapist's validation. Jewel of Aquarius, welcome to the chat. My ex's therapist told me that all he could do was help him manage his anger. I asked if there was a way to work on the thinking that led to such anger, and the therapist said no. I mean, and to undo that thinking, that was probably above that therapist's pay grade. But I think also what they're saying is behavior modification. That's all that is possible with them anyway. They're not, like, if they have that empathy deficiency that's in the brain because they lack gray matter in certain areas, they're not going to be able to feel the empathy. Empathy is also a spectrum, but the most they can do is behavioral modification. That's it. Learning how to respond rather than react. Rather than saying the first thing that comes to their mind when they're triggered, try to take a step back and do something different. That's the best you can hope for with people like that. And honestly, it's a very uphill battle. Cat says, Narcs want to portray a happy, healthy relationship, but it's anything but. And why do they want to do that, Cat? Because it's all about the image. They care much more about appearing like the thing as opposed to being the thing. That also ties back into the performative empathy, right? Jewel says, at least you could see it, I guess. Yes, it could have been much worse in that case. He could have said something like, you need to empathize with your abuser. You need to empathize with him and try to be much more patient with him. And all that would happen is you would just get more disrespect and abuse in the process. There you go, Jewel. Yeah, it's all about appearing like. That's what Christian said in my interview with him too. They don't want to be the thing. They want to appear like the thing. Because Christian said his dad was a spiritual guru, but he was a spiritual narcissist. He was a meditation teacher, but he never taught Christian how to meditate. Why? Because there was no audience for it. He wasn't able to get any supply for it. But when he was off doing his thing in front of other people, now he gets supply from teaching people how to meditate. And I'm not sure if he's getting paid to do it. But when it came to his own family, you're not going to do it then, because where's the payoff for them? They want to be seen doing it. The image is so much more important to them. And this is why when you live with a covert narcissist and then you see how they act in public, it seems so fake because you see it from a mile away. You see how they are behind closed doors, and they're not that way. And granted, and this is different than the public persona anyone could have. When it's a covert narcissist, it's night and day different. Night and day. And then if you're the husband or wife or the children of a covert narcissist and you see how they act in public, it is super obnoxious. It is so annoying to see them put on that front. And then it fools people too, unfortunately. And these are the very same people that will say, oh, they were never unkind to me. They were always cool to me. I don't know why you think you have a problem with them. I can't imagine they were abusive. They've always been nice to me. But they're just showing they don't understand. They don't understand the possible dynamic that is going on. They don't understand abusive relationships. They don't understand narcissism. And that's a very invalidating thing for the spouse or children of a covert narcissist to hear. Oh, You're lucky to have them as a parent. You're lucky to have them as a spouse. Anyone would want that. No, you would not want that. You wouldn't wish that on your enemies, but they just don't get it. They don't understand. Yes, Shara's right, Jolly. Jewel, I love your IG, she says. Thanks for the warm welcome here. Of course. So I'm glad that you saw that. You saw my story on Instagram. I'm trying to recruit more people to come here because this is an opportunity to talk to me, ask questions. I'll have a topic that I'll start with. And then as the people here know, it goes into many areas sometimes. We talk about all sorts of things. Yes, coverts can be the most awful for sure. In particular, I think the covert spiritual narcissist is one of the top 3 worst because they twist the spirituality in there as well. And I think especially when they're in a healing space, that can be extra dangerous. The same with a covert malignant narcissist. The malignant narcissists are the ones that are more closely related to antisocial personality disorder. That's when they're going to be a little more criminal, more than likely, a little more sadism in there too. Very dangerous. Those 2 to me are the top 2 dangerous, but they're all dangerous. So that's just something we talk about, but they're all bad. There is no safe narcissist, we'll say. But I'm glad you found me, Jewel, from Instagram. I'm going to try to announce it more so that more people will come. And anyone who's here, Kat, Jewel, Jolly, you can invite people you know in here too so that we can have a bigger audience, I guess, and we can ask all sorts of questions or if you have any topics you want to see me go over, we can definitely do that too. And I like this format because it's more open. I do a ton of videos that are just the 60-second shorts, and it's basically me doing a monologue. But I like this because it's more of a back and forth. I also really like interviews too because I like bouncing my ideas off of people as well and learning about their takes, etc. I think that's all pretty cool. But those are all the things a covert narcissist will do. They're going to be that fake person on the outside. They want to appear like the thing. Hoorah, Phil Bradley is right. You're neither late nor early. Phil Bradley, like Gandalf the Wizard, only arrives on time. Nope, not late or early, I said, Phil Bradley. Just like the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect is neither late nor early, nor is Phil. And so, but it comes to the appearance, and this is what I said to the therapist too. If you're a therapist out there, what I would say to you is, remember, everything a narcissist does is about power, control, managing their image, narcissistic supply, and avoiding accountability. And for the people who don't know, what is narcissistic supply? Narcissistic supply is what they use to boost themselves. And some people might say it's a myth, it's a boost. But what do they use to confirm their excessive need for admiration, their sense of superiority, and their grandiosity? So anything can be used for narcissistic supply. H.G. Tudor would call it narcissistic fuel, but that can be people, it can be control, it can be money, it can be status, it can be attention, it can be sex, it can be drugs and alcohol, even to a lesser extent, all of it. Jolly says, I've invited a friend. Her husband has control of the YouTube account. She needs her own account. Doesn't sound very good, Jolly. Not very good at all that the husband has control of the account. Sounds like it might be a little bit of a coercive control there. I don't want to jump the gun or anything, but I think any adult could and should have their own account, right? I don't see a reason why not. Rachel, daughter of Yah, welcome. Question: do narcissists ever warn their supply beforehand that they are bad and that you shouldn't have a relationship with them? Yes, they do. That's a very good question. And yes, they do. They'll tell on themselves if you pay attention. And sometimes they'll say things like, I'm crazy, or I'm really bipolar, or I'll hear them say codependent sometimes too, or I'm a handful. And they'll say it jokingly, but they're not joking. Those are things that you shouldn't ignore. But granted, when people aren't familiar with this dynamic, they don't understand to take it seriously. There's also other ways they tell on themselves too. I'm going to make a shorts video about this, but often what they'll do is they'll tell you what other people are doing. Oh, can you believe this person at my work? They're doing this. They're cheating on their wife, or they're addicted to pornography, or they're drinking all the time. And often those things they're saying other people are doing are what the narcissist is doing themselves. Or what they accuse you of, the accusations are confessions. That could also be the case for sure. But there's very subtle ways they'll tell on themselves. But usually it's what they say other people are doing or what they accuse you of. Jules says, my mom is a covert narcissist. When I was young, I worked not to be like my mom and not marry a sexual deviant like she did. My blind spot was to not marry someone like my mom. How did that happen? Well, that actually happens a lot. So I see that with people that at first marry maybe a grandiose narcissist. They see through the grandiose narcissist, they leave, and then they think, all right, I'm never going to be with someone like that again. And then they wind up with a covert narcissist because they think the covert can't possibly be a narcissist because they're thinking grandiose when they think narcissist. They think loud and bombastic and all the narcissistic traits are very clear to see. But the covert is not that way, of course. So I've seen a lot of people have that happen. Chelsea Brooke Cole, she's a good example of that. I've interviewed her a couple times in the channel. She's a blonde woman, LPC, but that's what happened to her. And she wrote a book called If Only I'd Known. And that's what she was referring to because she first got with the grandiose. She thought, nope, I'll never get with someone like that again. Instead, she got with the opposite version, the covert narcissist version. But both of them are something to look out for. But another thing that happens is when it's your parents, even if it's not the narcissistic parent, and in your case, a sexual deviant parent, you know, the behaviors that you see your parents do, you can associate them with love. And so I'm not sure what your mom's deal was. She was a covert narcissist. So yeah, that's what I just said is exactly why that probably happened. Because if home wasn't a safe place for you, be very careful with people who feel like home in adulthood. And yes, hindsight's 2020, absolutely. Ellie, how are you? Kat says to Rachel, yeah, my ex would say I'm pure and he isn't worthy of me early on. That's another good way they'll tell themselves, Kat. Very smart. Very wise of you to pick up on that. They will say that. And it's kind of a way to subtly play the victim a little bit too. Oh, you're just so much better than me. You deserve better than me. And they know when they say that, it can kind of have the reverse effect sometimes. Like when they try to push you away, it makes the other person want them more. It's kind of a manipulation, seduction tactic in a way. Right. Looking back, I excused the red flags for sure. That's a big one, Jewel. The excusing in particular, but there's a word for that. It's called deering. Defend, excuse, explain, rationalize. That's what a lot of people end up doing when they see the red flags. They'll have go-to excuses they give themselves. And maybe they'll say, and it's the things I said before. Oh, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I want to see the good in them. I've got a good heart. I have empathy. I have compassion. I'll be giving them a second chance. Anyone can do better. Anyone can change. Anyone can grow. Or they had a bad childhood. But fill in the blank with whatever it is. You got to be very careful if you catch yourself deering. Angela, how are you? I hope you read my comments there that I was talking to you before on the Grace interview. Yeah, me too. Lots of them because I loved him, but now I know it was one-sided. Yeah, those one-sided relationships are no good. But they happen to a lot of us. Chelsea Brooke Cole. I'll write it in the comments here. I've also interviewed her twice, which I think you would probably enjoy. There we are. Chelsea Brooke Cole, LPC. Ellie says, Jared, got myself worried, but hanging tough. How are you? Today's been a good day. I'm feeling pretty good today. Feeling good, sprightly, alive, on top of my game. I can't complain. But why are you worried, Ellie? Talk to us. Get rid of the narcissist and buy a new Xbox today like I did. There you go. Nothing wrong with some video games, I would say. Some people become rich playing video games nowadays. Look at all the streamers on YouTube or the people on Twitch. That's what they're doing. They make a fortune having people watch them play video games. And for some reason, I had that video, the 3 ways a therapist can spot the abusive person in therapy. I had 3 ways. One was to see who's more dominant, but I had also the 2 exceptions, the covert narcissist, and if it's an addict alcoholic, they might appear to be a little more subdued. And then another big one was asking them, what can you improve specifically about yourself? That's a question that abusive people, narcissists, they're really going to struggle to answer that question. What can you do to improve yourself? They don't like that question one bit. They're not very good at answering that question at all. So that's another big one. Another one would be asking them to describe their conflicts at home. Because when you hear about their conflicts, you'll be able to see the dynamics. Who's blame shifting? Who's belittling? Who's name calling? Who's the one trying to please the other? Who's the one trying to jump through the other person's hoops? Those are all the things to pay attention to. Because the person who's trying to please the other and jump through their hoops, that person is probably the person being victimized. The person who sounds more belittling, condescending, the blame shifter, that's the person who is usually the abuser. Yes, they are, Jolly. But they're laughing all the way to the bank, though, aren't they? Angela says, I read your comments below your interview, but some of the comments that I sent you there disappeared, and I don't know why. Sometimes YouTube filters comments, sad to say. But that does happen. It's possible they're in my held for review comments, and I have to check them out. Did you name call someone, Angela? That could stop them too. What is happening in our country, etc.? Been listening to Pope Leo. What did he say? I'm behind on this. Angela posted a comment that didn't show up either. Yeah, it's frustrating because I don't know why that happens. Rachel says, thanks, Jared. Because of you and some others I listen to, I'm receiving healing and I want to help others. I'm praying for oil for all on here. I suggest going completely no contact. I suggest that as well. Block them on everything. Don't leave any channels of communication open, because any channels of communication you leave open is an opportunity for them to try to get through the door, or the Hoover attempts. And this is a great example to pay attention to when you dare defend, excuse, explain, rationalize. I had a friend that was just in this situation, and I told her the guy wasn't listening to her when she was trying to break up with him. He just wasn't taking no for an answer, or he was acting like he wasn't hearing it, and he just kept on texting, day after day after day. I'm going to therapy. I'm doing all the right things. I'm getting medication. Meanwhile, she's telling him, no, we're broken up. Stop. And then she would kind of cave a little bit and talk to him a little bit and then go back to her resolve. And then finally because she would show me these messages and I would say, like, why are you still talking to him? Like, if you're broken up and that's really what you want, why are you entertaining this? Because all he's trying to do is turn your boundaries into a debate. Your boundaries are not a debate. Your breakup is not a debate. You don't need to be a defense lawyer while he's the prosecuting attorney trying to find holes in your case. That's not what you need. And I said, then she told me she blocked him. But then it turned out she only blocked him in a couple places. She didn't block him in all places. And I said, why didn't you do that? And that's where the deering came in. She had some sort of an excuse about, well, I was getting entertained from the messages or something. I was like, is that really what it is? Or you're leaving that door open just enough because you don't want to rip the Band-Aid off. And I don't want to act like it's super easy to rip the Band-Aid off. It's not super easy to do that, but it's what must be done, especially if there's no other extenuating circumstances. If you don't have kids with them, you're not married, you're not in a lease, you can just go. You can just go as long as you do so safely. But a lot of people tell themselves all sorts of things. Well, I want to make sure they land on their feet. I just want to do this. I just want to do that. But at the end of the day, they are plausible but untrue reasons why they are doing it more than likely. And granted, a lot of it can be the trauma bond too. The trauma bond can lie to us. The trauma bond can tell us all sorts of things that aren't true. And how do we know that? Because we begin to not trust ourselves. We don't trust our gut. We don't trust our perception of reality. But the way to start trusting your gut and to trust your perception of reality is blocking them on everything. Because I'll tell you, one of the best cures is not hearing from them in any way. And I like to tell this part of the story too. Many moons ago, when yours truly, the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect, was still in a trauma bond, all it took was the woman liking my stuff to keep that trauma bond alive. And it sounds like that's ridiculous. Oh, that's ridiculous. How could that? But it was giving me just enough love and approval to not let it die. And it wasn't until I blocked her on everything did that thing begin to truly heal. And that's when the Band-Aid was ripped off. And then you're really without them. You're not getting the hit, the narc hit, as they call it. There's this one guy, I forget his name now, but he would call it the narc pipe. He would call it the narc pipe. He goes, you don't want to take a hit off that narc pipe. Well, I don't know why it did that then, Angela. Kat says, when telling my ex I didn't want anything to do with him ever again, he'd ignore all my points and goodbyes and ask me to watch Love is Blind with him, of all things. That's exactly what they'll do, though. It's the perfect example of it. They'll ignore what you say and say, can we talk? Can you please talk to me? Can you please communicate? Can we please hang out? Meanwhile, they ignored every bit of your boundary. They ignored every bit of you being assertive. And that's also how narcissists control conversations. They control conversations by ignoring parts of what you say and then going on the offensive and asking you questions and getting you to jump through their hoops. That's how they control the conversation, so you know. Kat says, Jewel, thank you. That's kind of you to say. Narcs can really mess with your head. Yes, they can. My comments were very respectful. Sorry for the mistake. Well, I believe you, Angela. Ellie, that's probably still a true statement by him. My ex's brother-in-law is in the DA's office. I've had no contact with my children for 8 years. They can F us up. No contact with your children. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the children can be off the rocker too. Melissa, welcome to the chat. Kat says, I know, right? I refuse to play his game anymore. The way to win is to not play their game. That's for sure. Because to play their game, and that's another thing I see happen to people sometimes. They want revenge or they want to get them back and show off to them if they're doing well. But to me, that's all playing their game. That's playing their game. And some of that's human. Don't get me wrong. You want to have that, look how good I'm doing. I want them to see. But the part of you that wants them to see is the very same part of you that still cares what they think a little bit. And it's the very same part of you that's still in a trauma bond. Kat says, we need to do something about it. It's becoming an epidemic. Yes, the epidemic of narcissism is a real thing. I'll go over that in a minute. That's horrible, Jewel. Never date singers. Yeah, I mean, a lot of singers in the artistic world, the musical world, they're very open and free-spirited, which often means lots of alcohol and drugs and sex and cheating. Often. Big heart. No BS. It all starts in the home. Yes, it does. Thank you, Ellie. But what was I about to say? Oh, the epidemic of narcissism. So I would say, in regards to the epidemic of narcissism, I don't think it's an epidemic of full-blown NPD. But what it is an epidemic of people behaving narcissistically. And why are they behaving narcissistically? Because narcissistic behaviors are being rewarded by our society. When people have social media to use as a stage, people who are already narcissists, they can't help it but to use that stage. It's irresistible. Look at this. All this supply I can get on my fingertips. I can get this attention, admiration, acknowledgement, and then I can even get status and money by feeding myself narcissistic supply. What more could a narcissist ask for? A forum like social media that can meet all of their needs. Wow. I mean, when you think of it like that, is it any wonder why there is? But so I think it makes people who are already narcissists, it makes them worse. The people that are not narcissists, well, I think they can behave more narcissistically. I don't think that means they can have full-blown NPD, but the behaviors might begin to look more similar, and it could even be similar to maybe narcissistic fleas, because that's the way the world is going right now. Think of how many people make money from online. I mean, I'm one of them. I make money from online, and I think more and more people are. It doesn't mean it's everyone's full-time job or anything, but there's a lot of people who are doing it as a side gig. And then what does social media encourage? It encourages attention-seeking behavior. It encourages edginess over accuracy. It encourages divisiveness. It encourages even triggering or trolling people, because all of those things get you more engagement. And that's why I say the social media algorithm, just like a narcissist. Why do I say that? Because narcissists like positive and negative attention. The key note about the negative attention, though, is they like the negative attention as long as they're in control of it, or they can still see it as a way to get fuel for themselves. An example, Sadia Khan. She was making fun of somebody I saw on Instagram who was ripping her. And you know what Sadia Khan said? She said, look at you. When you show my face on your page, you get 10 times more views. So Sadia, even though she was getting ripped, she was still getting supply and feeling important, because whenever this person was ripping her, they got more views. So Sadia was able to twist it into giving her supply. See? So yeah, she was ripping her, but Sadia was able to twist it to say, oh, I can still feel important because she's getting more views when she hates me. So she's able to use that as fuel. But with the social media algorithm, the one thing it doesn't like is being ignored. Just like a narcissist, they don't want to be ignored. The social media algorithm doesn't want to be ignored either. So what gets ignored? Unfortunately, a lot of positive content gets ignored. If you just say something thoughtful that's not really triggering or divisive, sometimes people just don't care. But if you talk about something political, or you talk about something that's controversial, now you'll get the dissenters. Now you'll get people disagreeing with you. And then they comment, maybe they yell at you. But what they don't realize is they're actually just helping your content get seen by more and more people. So if you're a creator, where's your incentive to not do that? It's really just what's in your character, what's in your integrity. Is it against your character to do it? Because your piggy bank will get larger if you don't have integrity. If you don't have character, if you don't have integrity, your wallet will get bigger. So if you just throw something out there that's divisive, especially in politics, that's all it takes to get paid. Doesn't matter if you're helping the world. You get paid by people commenting. You get paid by people engaging. So the point is, in a system like that, is there any wonder more people are narcissistic? Is there any wonder we're seeing an epidemic of narcissistic behaviors? Is there any wonder we're seeing an epidemic of emotional immaturity? I don't think there's a wonder. And these are things I'm going to talk to Christian again, I hope, at some point. because I think we could have a pretty interesting discussion about this. I missed a lot of comments. Angela says, I don't know Grace, but I'm a Christian, and conservatives in the US aren't Christians, and they aren't against narcissism because all politicians are narcissists. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I mean, what would they say about the Democrats then, or progressives? Also, Angela, I think an important thing to do would be to be specific about what the disagreement is. And you never know, it's not likely, but if you're very specific and you say it in a cool, calm, and collect way, it's possible you change some minds. That's possible. But if you just tell them to shut up or shut down, then you're not going to change anyone's mind by doing that. And I grant it, I get it. It can definitely be frustrating to even have the conversation. Negative attention is still attention, as they say. Yes, it is. Because you know why, Kat? Because hate is not the opposite of love. It is indifference. Narc pipe, that's humorous, but sadly true at the same time. That's why it was so humorous, Melissa. I forget this guy's name. Narcissism Unscripted, Narcology, I think his channel was. This was years ago. I'm going to look it up real quick for you. But he would call it the narc pipe. This is when I was a young lad in the narcissistic abuse space learning about it. Narcology Unscripted. There he is. No? No. Maybe they got rid of his channel. Oh, no. Oh. I'll have to look him up another time. But he would call it the narc pipe. And I know exactly what he means. It's when you get a hit of approval, when you get a little bit of their attention and admiration, that's positive. And especially when you're starving for it because you've been getting devalued and then maybe you've been ghosted or discarded. And then they come back around and they give you a little bit of love and affection. That scrap of love and affection feels amazing when you're starved for it, unfortunately. And that's how they condition you to be grateful for the bare minimum. And it always reminds me of what Viktor Frankl said. Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist, he was in Auschwitz concentration camp. And he had said, sometimes the smallest of kind deeds from one of the Nazi guards would make him cry because of that very same concept. When they're so used to them being mean, all it takes is a very little bit. And then all of a sudden that feels powerful. And that's how it would be because the narcissist is never going to be consistent. That's the one thing narcissists won't be. They're not going to be consistent. It's going to be intermittent rewards. That is very similar to gambling in the brain. Jewel, that is how they hurt you, making you isolated, worried, slandered, etc. Absolutely correct, Ellie. Rachel says narcissism is straight from Satan himself. He was the first one and has slowly deceived other people into following along because they don't have to be truthful with themselves. I think there's some truth in that, Rachel. Especially because he was the most beautiful angel, right? AD, what's shaking? Welcome to the chat. Dude, what's up with the wife beater for live stream? Because I needed you to comment, of course. And the same reason with the wands. And you're going to prove my example of the algorithm being like a narcissist. I used to actually listen to people when they would yell at me for my wand. They'd call my wand a crack pipe. Like, why do you have a crack pipe in your hand? And I'd say, well, it's my magic wand. It's a reminder to myself and others the little things in life matter. And then I wear like my sleeveless shirts. And then people would say, you should wear a shirt because you don't seem professional. And I used to say, you know what? Maybe they're right. And then I realized, no, I'm going to give them something to comment about. And it's going to help my content in the algorithm. So I said, you know what? It's toasty. I'll wear a sleeveless shirt. And I'll get AD to tell me. Yeah, they all love it. But even when they hate it, they love it. Because here's the thing. They hate it enough that they'll comment. And that's a win. That's a win for me when they do that. And that's an example of me. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not trying to like be an ass about it. It's just I'm being me. And by being me, it might make some people upset sometimes, which is fine. That's part of the game. Part of the game. Kat says, Narcology Unscripted used to give me the creeps. He was helpful, though. He's got a weird, perhaps a weird vibe, but it was interesting. He was one of the people that would pop up on my feed many moons ago. I think he's a Christian as well, I think. I agree, Angela. He really pissed at his dad, but it would be best for him not to confront him. Whose dad? Any political extreme is not good. Correct. I read Man's Search for Meaning. Great book. Yeah, it's one of my top 10. Man's Search for Meaning. I recommend everyone reads it. The other big things in the book were between stimulus and response, there's a gap. And in that gap, you have the freedom to choose your response, because he would say the Nazis could take away all of his freedoms except for one, the freedom for him to choose how he would respond in any given situation. And I think, yes, that's great. Yes, zero value, correct. Ellie, correct. Democrats and fake conservatives are narcissists if they are extremists. But you know what they also say, Angela? They'll say any virtue taken to its extreme can become a vice. Thank you, Jolly. I got a color that I try to match my outfits with. I can't help it to be myself, clearly. I had to work in. I used to not be that way, but I am now. I say, you know what? I own it. I love it. I like the banter with it, because even AD wasn't being like an ass about it. There are some people who truly are, though, angry when I do it. Like AD is a friend of the channel. So I'm busting his chops there a little bit, or it might be her chops. But it's like with other people, they are being serious, but they're still helping me even when they're serious. I'm glad I've never had a child with a narc. That's a big one, because that's one of those things where that's a life changer. That's 18 years of insanity. I have a couple friends in that spot, and it's not something I would wish on people. Not something I would wish on people at all, because narcissists in that spot, when they can't control you, they'll settle for making you miserable. That's their goal. And that's what I'm going to talk about again with Chantel Contarines. We did already once before, probably 6 to 9 months ago now. But she's going to be on the channel again next week. It'll probably be uploaded on Saturday or Sunday next week. So that should be pretty cool too. That will be good. Hit of approval. It's horrible, Cat. The narc uses them as weapons against you. That's another good thing to go over, how they'll use the kids as pawns. And they'll use them as flying monkeys too. And the kids become unknowing flying monkeys in that case as well. And that's what Chantel said that I think was really accurate. She said, if you're tempted to get mad at your kids for being a flying monkey, just remember, there was a time when you were probably a flying monkey for the narcissist too. And maybe you would defend them to your other friends and family, because in the beginning, that's probably what you did. You probably did defend them to your friends and family in the beginning before you saw through it yourself. And maybe your friends and family were trying to tell you, yeah, this person's no good. This person's not good for you. But you didn't want to hear it at the time. And actually, one of my friends today was telling me the very same thing. She said, one of my friends is with a guy that she thinks is narcissistic. And she said, Jared, what do I tell him? What do I tell my friend? And I said, there's really not much you can say. You can just maybe point out the things about him that you think aren't necessarily good. But if they're hell-bent on being with someone, you're not going to be able to talk them out of it. Unfortunately, most people need to learn the hard way. And that's why we also say, once you've broken up with a narcissist, some people want to kind of warn the new supply. Oh, should we warn them? Should I warn this new supply about the narcissist? And I would say, honestly, the new supply is probably just going to think you're jealous. And the new supply is going to think, oh, you just want to sabotage my relationship. You just want me to not be happy. You want to break us up because you're not happy and you're miserable, and misery loves company. So that's why you don't usually say anything, because, and if you do, you can say one thing and you say, hey, this person was awful. They almost ruined my life. I don't expect you to believe me. You can do with this information as you want. I'm not going to try to control you, but this is how it was. And then leave it at that. I wouldn't try pushing it, because if you try to push it, the more you push, the more they're going to push back. It's fun to find out who we are. We are free now, and we need to be good to ourselves and have fun being ourselves. Absolutely. Oscar Wilde said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Yes, indeed. Yes. Yes, it's so true, Jolly says. I don't remember what I said, but I'll assume it was so true. Angela says, you can debate with people to listen to different opinions, but sometimes it's a waste of time. Sorry, Jared, but I didn't like your interview with Grace because women like her don't represent Christians. And that's fair of you to say. It's fair. I don't expect everyone to like it. That interview was for people that maybe are conservatives, that maybe aren't feeling seen, heard, understood, and they feel isolated or marginalized. That was for them. Now, there could be another time for maybe trying to get them to see perhaps what some would consider the error in their ways. But that was not what the purpose of that interview was. I didn't want to ambush her with that. I just seen that people were ostracizing her, asking that they take her episode of the podcast down. I thought that was a little wild. I mean, because in the abuse space, that's the number one goal, helping people with abuse. So, but I get what you're saying, Angela. Jolly says, thank you, Kat. It can be heartbreaking to experience for the kids and myself. Very much so. My favorite Oscar Wilde quote is, if you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life. I actually haven't. I like that one too, Kat. I got a bunch of favorite Oscar Wilde quotes. I have one of them tattooed on my ribs, actually. All saints have a past, all sinners have a future. That's one. He's got a lot of cynical ones too that I've also liked. Let's see if I can remember them. Actually, I could probably go through some of these quotes here for you right now, actually. Actually. I know one of them is, if you give a man a mask, he'll tell you the truth. And that's another big one that Oscar used to say. What else he used to say? Some people bring happiness wherever they go, and others whenever they go. Thank you, Cap. It's actually still going on, like what Jewel is experiencing. There's a lot to go through. I'll give you that. That's definitely. Oh, it's another good one, Kat. We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. That's another good one. What's more? I got a bunch of them on the tip of my tongue. One of them is about men and women and friends. They say, between men and women, there can be no friends. They said there can be love, there can be worship, there can be enemies, but never friendship, is what Oscar says. And what else does he say? There's so many. Cat Wilde from Your Love of Oscar Wilde and The Portrait of Dorian Gray. Oh, yeah, they definitely will make you miserable if they can't control you. It is heartbreaking with kids. Oh, absolutely. No, here's another good one. Never love anyone who treats you like you're ordinary. To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That is all. One of my favorites. Selfishness is not living as one wishes to live. It is asking others to live as one wishes to live. Because all children wind up loving their parents, and then as they get older, they start to not like them or become resentful. But rarely, if ever, do they forgive them. There's many of them. There's many good Oscar Wilde quotes. Always got like a little cynical flair into them. Was he really? He was in some Robert Greene books, Oscar Wilde, when he came and did his American tour. He would hang out with the miners and he would drink them under the table because they used to thought he was like, oh, who is this kind of feminine looking guy? But then it turns out he had a big masculine side too that they all liked. Jared Pope Leo sermons that are being giving serious warning about our world now. What was the warning, Ellie? Yes, it is kind of like the golden rule. I was watching some of that, Ellie. Yeah. Well, yeah, but what was the warning? Was it about something in particular? Was it about politics? Was it about something else? The jewel of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, and there's the jewel of Aquarius. I love it. AI. I mean, AI is definitely something we should be worried about, I think. I think it's going to take some jobs soon. We're already seeing people use it to make content, which I don't like. I don't want to lose my brain power. I want to be able to think. As also, Jewel, one of the big reasons I'm here, because these live streams, this is not something that AI can recreate. AI can't do this. AI can't talk to you the way I'm talking to you now. So I'm trying to lean into the things that humans can do, not AI. AI can do a recorded video. AI can do a history video. AI cannot speak to you in a live stream like this. At least not that I know of. Jared, that we are in extremely dangerous times and what to do from a spiritual perspective. What was his suggestion? It's extremely scary what's happening to our world. Yes, it's been surreal. I'll put it to you like that. Since Charlie Kirk died, I think and even before that, there's been a pretty surreal energy. And I'm not saying that as a fan of Charlie Kirk. I'm just saying it changed things. Whether you liked them or not, it changed things. ChatGPT has actually been a great therapist for me, LOL, to get away from the narc. Yeah, I've seen that happen. I've seen a lot of people get helped by ChatGPT. But I've also warned that the narcissist can use ChatGPT as an enabler flying monkey, or they can triangulate you with ChatGPT. You got to watch out for that too. Jolly says people on both political sides being murdered for what they feel and say. You know what my thoughts on that are, Jolly? Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. You know that song? There's something happening here, and what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I've got to beware. My name is Julie, and I'm an Aquarius. That's where that's from. And word, bro, it's about humanity. Absolutely. AI can destroy humans? Yes, it can. They've already had some of that happen where they've lost control of some and the humans had to shut it down. Angela says, I'm not Catholic, but the world has always had problems. We have warning signs all the time. I don't feel fear at all. Good, because fear is the mind killer. I shall not fear. Fear is the mind killer. What's that from? Dune. Yes, yep. Once my ex knew I was using Got for clarifying, he would send, or ChatGPT for clarifying, he would send me links how ChatGPT can be bad. I'm sure. I'm sure. He didn't want you to use him or use ChatGPT on your team. He wanted to isolate you from ChatGPT, just like they'll try to isolate you physically. Aha! I understood what you meant. I'm the cat whisperer, they say. I might have my friend the dog whisperer on as well. I'm pretty good at reading through typos now. I can understand most of them. But AI is definitely something to worry about. The divisiveness of our politics is something to worry about. I think climate's low on my list. For some people, that's very high on their list, but it's not really high on my list. But I'm for taking care of the planet. And there are certainly people that are not for that. Yes, I am. It's a skill. It's like learning how to read your children's handwriting or learning to understand their jibber jabber. You can see. Taiwanese, or maybe I just speak womanese. How about that? Speaking of womanese, where's George? He's going to be in trouble again. I'm going to give him a demerit. I'm going to give him a demerit for not being in the chat. Taiwanese, womanese, Chinese, Japanese. There's a ease for everything. I wonder what the Egyptians used to speak. Ancient Egyptian. I like the Egyptians. I just like history. I liked the ancient Egyptians. You gotta speak womanese. I'm good at womanese, Jewel. You can't get anything by me. I can speak some womanese. I used to not be able to, but I've learned. I've learned how to pick some up. That's why I also used to coach men on dating. I used to do a lot of dating stuff for men because I can always decipher. I can decipher what's going on when a lot of men can't decipher. But it was cool. For me, it was almost like a puzzle. I would see it as a puzzle to solve. That's like my autistic thing, I guess. I would see their struggles with dating and I'd be like, I can help you. You have to speak more on to communicate with the narcissist. You reminded me of the person that said, in vino veritas, in wine there's truth, in narcissist only projection. The most amazing thing in the world is talking to emotionally healthy men and compare them to narcissists. You notice the difference, and I love that. There you go. I mean, there's a fair amount of narcissists these days. Jared, would be better for you to listen to the Pope than me trying in this limited text to translate his ideas. Fair enough. I'll be curious what he said. I mean, the Pope's from America now, too. The Pope was a Chicago White Sox fan, I think. Or was it Chicago Cubs? I don't remember. But he was. He's definitely a fan of someone. We were in, you know what, though, Ellie? This is my thing about the Catholic Church. They've lost so much credibility from the priest diddlings. Like that hurt them so badly in the eye of public opinion. And there was an FBI investigation about it, and the whole thing was like a narcissistic family system. It was a dysfunctional family system. And in a time when I agree with you, Ellie, that the world needs some morals and values and principles, they can't afford to have the Catholic Church be going off the rails like that. But the Catholic Church, just like any big organization, they are subject to any of the flaws of any big organization. Yeah, They should be held to a higher standard, perhaps, because of what they're doing. But any place where there's a lot of power and money to be had, there's going to be some corruption. There's going to be some unsavory characters. There's going to be some narcissists. There's going to be some Machiavellians. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. I mean, look at our political system. Our political system is a magnet for narcissists. It's insane. And how can we expect to be in a great spot when more than half the leaders are narcissists or psychopaths? And as Axl Rose said in Civil War, look at the leaders we follow. Or in the beginning of the song, he says, look at the hate we're breeding. Look at the lives we're leading. Look at the fear we're feeding, the way we've always done before. Narcissists are like robots talking stupid things all the time. But once you see it, though, Angela, you can't unsee it, as Dr. Z was saying. And I agree with her. Once you see the pattern, they're easy to pick up for the most part. You can still get blindsided sometimes if you're not ready for one. Sometimes I'll see it in comments where I'll think, oh, I wasn't ready for this. But then you see it. You're like, okay, I'm back on my game now. I see it. I'm not religious, but open-minded and spiritual. That's kind of what I do, Kat. I pray, but I don't necessarily pray to a specific religion's God. How about that? I'm a omnist. An omnist is someone that sees some truth in all religions, but then they all lose me when they say they're the only right way. And that's something I could have talked to with Grace about, perhaps. I have the most amazing man now. He is my safe space. I love that, Jewel. It sounds like he provides you positive masculine containment, as they would say. Any church, any religion can be tarnished by bad guys. Correct, for sure. I'm not singling out the Catholic Church. It's any church. Look at Joel Osteen. Look at Muslims. Look at Islam. Look at Judaism. Any of them. Buddhism. The spiritual narcissists. They're all there. This man too. It's lovely. I'm happy for you. You can be yourself and express yourself with normal people. Yes. Well said, Angela. Valerie Lynn, welcome to the chat. I converted to Catholicism during the sex scandals, and I laughed because it was nothing compared to what I converted from. Ha! What did you convert from? Whatever you converted from must have been pretty outrageous. Kat, thank you. I wish that for all of us, for sure. For whatever people want, right? Some people don't want a relationship anymore, and that's fine, as long as they're being honest with themselves about it. Because there is a thing. I mean, you can have some good connections with friendships. You can have some good connections with family. But there is something a little special and magical about a romantic relationship. There just is. And I don't think that's like harmful or belittling to say to the people that are single. I'm single. And I still say that. I still say there's something magical about that kind of connection. And just because I don't have that right now doesn't mean that I look down on it and think, no, it's useless. Romantic and sexual relationships are useless. No, I don't think that at all. Did I scare my friend AD away by being sarcastic? Where did he go? Kat, thank you. I wish. No blood cult for me. Oh, you're not talking about some QAnon blood cults, are you? Charlie says, the minister of the Southern Baptist school I went to was put in prison for SAing young girls. They were really young girls. Oh, that's horrible. That is no bueno. And it does happen. Absolutely. Not just in religious places. It happens in other places as well. Your perfect best friend is out there. Manifest it, right, Jewel? Everything's created twice. Once in your mind and then another time in reality. Valerie says, just another non-denominational church, but in the Catholic Church now they have oversight and training, whereas the non-denominational church has nothing. Yeah. Well, maybe the Catholic Church is learning from the error of their ways, which I think is good, because I think it's contrary to what atheists would say. I think society functions better when there's good religious structures, that maybe it's not a religious state, but there's still people going. So not like a place like Iran or something that's a religious state. But in America, there used to be a lot of religious people. The government wasn't religious per se, but I think society functions better when there are some people who are religious, as long as they don't get carried away with it. How about that? Kat says, we live in a hookup culture that's never been my thing. I'm a romantic, so it's difficult. Yes, I think the instant gratification culture leads to hookup culture, and pornography leads to hookup culture as well. It sure does happen in other places as well. Yes, it does. Jewel says, no blood sacrifice. I believe Jesus was teaching us how to transcend this dimension. That's reborn to me. Hey, and I'm all for that. Angela says, God has a best friend and partner for everybody, but sometimes it's a hard find to find it. That's also true. Like I said, I can't guarantee everyone has some sort of soulmate, but this is what I can guarantee, that it's never the wrong thing to work on becoming the best version of yourself. When you become the best version of yourself, more things are likely to go well. And then whether you believe in soulmates or not, when you work on becoming the best version of yourself, then you become more likely to find your soulmate. That's my 2 cents. That's the wizard's 2 cents. Valerie, I think Gnostics taught a lot that Catholicism doesn't. I never understood the hookup culture again. I mean, hookup culture is just people that don't have any morals or boundaries around when they have sex. I mean, there used to be a no sex before marriage culture that we lived in. There used to be if you had children outside of marriage, you were shamed. And here's the other thing. I don't necessarily think all of that shame was all bad. I think we started to think it was. And so now that shame doesn't really exist anymore. But I think it served a purpose. And some people will probably get mad about that. But I think in lieu of laws, shame is a good middle ground, I think. Because I don't necessarily think you want laws. You don't want the government interfering. But shame is the next step before government interfering, which I think has a place sometimes. I think sometimes it's beneficial. My soulmate passed away of leukemia when he was 43 and I was 35. Well, very sorry to hear that, Jolly. My ex was my best friend in love, so I had to walk away from both. Yeah, my friend Kelly was in that very same spot, but it turned on them. Have I ever been part of the hookup culture? I guess a very little bit, but not really. I've been single for a long time, and I enjoy being single. Sorry to hear that. Thank you. Yeah, that's always difficult, Charlie. It's a big thing. It's a big thing when someone that important to you passes away. Have you ever seen 6 Feet Under, Jolly? That's one of my favorite shows, by the way. But it's all about death. And ironically, a show about death was really all about life, because it talks about what's important. It talks about the things that are meaningful. And one of the things the character says, his name was Nate, is to make each day matter. And that's a big one, to make each day matter. It's one of my favorite shows, Kat. There was a magical time on HBO, The Sopranos, The Wire, and 6 Feet Under, were all on at the same time. Can you believe that? That was insane. That's insane. But they're three of my favorite shows, and they were all on at the same time. Why? It's just that was a golden era of TV. There was a 90s golden era of movies, and then there was an early 2000s golden era of TV. In particular, HBO. I thought that was awesome. So 6 Feet Under is one of those shows that if you could rewatch it, you would learn something again every time. And as you get older, you would see it from different perspectives each time. And I think that's the beauty of a great movie or a great series or a great book. You can reread it over and over again, and you'll pick up new lessons each time. The entertainment industry died a long time ago. I agree. I think the last good of it was freaking Game of Thrones before the last season. I really liked that. But right now I'm reading And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. He wrote another couple books called Kite Runner and one more. But he's a really good author, actually. I enjoy reading some fiction books because sometimes nonfiction can get a little bit stale. But it's a magical book. Talks about all sorts of things. And that's where I got that quote that I told Kelly that some people are, what'd she say? Some people are depressed in the same way people love, privately and intensely. No, I did not see Pushing Daisies. No. Is that similar to 6 Feet Under? Yeah, Valerie, one of my favorite shows of all time. One of those things that you can watch over and over again. Who is your favorite character? Angela says, I don't like fiction books because those are fake histories. Angela. I would say fiction books can teach you something. They can teach you things that are true in a magical way. They have a good way of teaching real life lessons. How about that? So I highly recommend some fiction books, but they're not for everybody. They're not for everybody. 24. It was funny and cute, but also had deep messages. Yes, it did. Now, I like real history too, Angela. I like World War II history. I like political history. I like all of it. I like to read in general. I try to go back and forth between fiction and nonfiction. Fox Mulder was on Californication. Although I think I liked X-Files better than Californication. When I think about it, all the characters were really quite epic. They were also very different and yet so complete in themselves. So I think I used to relate to Nate at the time, mostly because as a guy, there really wasn't as many people to relate to. There was Rico, but Rico was more married with a kid. So that was a little bit different. The truth is out there, Kat. There's big subreddits on it too. But I mean, Nate certainly had his flaws, but it was just super interesting. And I always say my favorite definition of a soulmate was from 6 Feet Under. The person that helps you to become the most you can be and helps you to grow the most as a person, keeping in mind that not all growth is comfortable. And there's Claire. I like the dad. I think that's another thing. The dad, the way he would talk to his children, and even Ruth, I think he was awesome. And even after David, when he got that wild assault, that dude took him on that wild ride, and then he confronted the guy in jail, and then his dad came to him in the night, and he told him that sometimes you just got to try to let go of that pain because it's not doing shit for you anymore. And he goes, David's like, but it's not that easy to let it go. And his dad was like, well, what if I told you it was? And some people might say maybe that's invalidating, but I would say, you know what? I know exactly what he meant, because he wasn't saying it in the antagonistic jerk tone that the spiritual narcissistic people will tell it in. you could tell there was emotional safety first. If there's emotional safety first, you can be a little more blunt sometimes. You can be a little more real and tough as long as there's emotional safety first. If there's not emotional safety first, now you're just a jerk. Now you're just being antagonistic, hostile, or combative. You can't have that. Whereas the dad always had something wise to say. Yes, he did. We used to think Fox was so hot back in the day. Rewatching, he's pretty feminine. Is he really? Fox Mulder is feminine? It's been a long time since I've seen it. But now that you mentioned it, Jewel, I wouldn't be surprised if Scully was more masculine. I mean, she was the one keeping him in line, right? That's more of the masculine role. So I could see it in that way. Mulder. How about Krychek or the Smoking Man? And that was back in the day when music would even talk about the X-Files. That one song that said, I hope the Smoking Man's in this one. Like Harrison Ford, I'm getting frantic. And the chicken to China, the Chinese chicken, was great. Was the agent Fox hot? Yeah, according to some. Although also people liked the FBI director Skinner. On the X-Files subreddit, they're all obsessed with him. This is live. We do everything live. Like I said to you last time, recorded. We're recorded. Now, that's not one of my go-to karaoke signs, or songs, the chicken to China, the Chinese chicken. But the Smoking Man is this one, I think, is part of the lines in there. But that was back when people actually look forward to weekly shows. There was a show once a week. The same with The Sopranos back in the day and 6 Feet Under. But people would look forward to that one show. It's pretty awesome. I like Wall Street movies. Wall Street? Like The Wolf of Wall Street? Or Wall Street with Gordon Gekko? I interviewed the Wolf of Wall Street's wife, Dr. Nadine Macaluso. My kitty, Fox, is as cute as Fox Mulder. Fox is my spirit animal. Foxes, not Fox Mulder. Foxes. Foxes are my spirit animal. Angela, why do you like those Wall Street people? A lot of them are pretty narcissistic and exploitative. That's what they do. I'm Cancer. What is your astrological sign? Leo is high. Yeah, I mean, mostly on Quaaludes in The Wolf of Wall Street, right? Or that classic scene where he's trying to get to his freaking Porsche or Maserati or whatever the hell it was. See, I can be equally a cat and dog person. I like them both. The Wall Street uniform? Not a soldier, not a cop, but a Wall Street uniform? You mean a shirt and a tie? I don't know, Angela. I don't know about this. I'm a Pisces, although I don't know much about anything else besides Pisces and Scorpio. Doyle Brunson is my spirit animal. We're playing Texas Hold'em? Yours truly used to play some Texas Hold'em. I'm actually pretty good at it, but it's been a long time since I've played. I'm good at reading people. So I can read people, and I can read them by their bet sizes, etc. And I was pretty good. But if I was down the Texas Hold'em rabbit hole, I probably wouldn't be doing this. And that was the issue with it for me. It was an obsession. It's also an expensive obsession. And if you lose, and it would also do a number on my mental health. It would make me like a hypomanic, because cards is like a stimulant. It's insane. And Julie, you know what I'm talking about if you like it. Other people might not know, but it would put me into a fantasy world Valerie says, I don't want to get mixed up with another narcissist. I love what you just said about 6 feet under, because it seems like one of the things that we need to do is make sure we feel emotionally safe. Yes. If I could say anything to someone about their next relationships, emotional safety. If you have that, that's the foundation, because involved in emotional safety is trust. And that also means you can disagree in a healthy way. It means everything. I liked practicing my intuition with poker. Yes, that's a good way to do it. Angela says, the real stockbroker uniform isn't a suit, but I love how they look and what they do. Stockbrokers are hot. You know, I'm surprised, Angela, that you like the old stockbrokers. But it goes to show you, people can have some tricks up their sleeves. Aries are strong and affectionate, Ellie says. Valerie, I have a thing for musicians. Never ends well. I think a lot of people have a thing for musicians, women in particular, especially lead singers. There's something about a lead singer that women just fall head over heels for a lot of times. Usually doesn't last, but they get a nice little run with them. I have Taurus, Moon, and Scorpio Ascendant. You play people, not always the cards. Oh, for sure. And those all, dude, Jewel, there's all sorts of top poker channels now. The heck were they? Brad, and then Charlie. There's also the level of skill out there is freaking out of this world now. Angela says, I didn't know that, Ellie. I heard that the Leo sign is about leadership. I don't give a fuck about famous people. I get you. I don't know. Like I pay attention a little bit to the signs, but I don't try to define myself by the signs. I know Daniel. I also like the fuck's his name? Doug Polk. I don't even like Doug Polk for his poker playing. I like just his kind of humor. He does the poker lodge. Like I said, though, like if I was down the poker rabbit hole, I wouldn't be here talking to you now. Intelligence combined with kindness can get me interested in a man. Well, there you go. So that just means I'm the best, aren't I? I'm the best here. Musicians have a lot of fans. You don't have to be a jealousy woman. Yeah. People who are genuine are my favorite kind of people. Those are the people I prefer to listen to in politics and in anything for that matter. Okay. I believe you. I believe you. And while you're all here, make sure you like the video if you didn't like it already. And maybe share this video with someone else that you think might benefit from learning a little about the covert narcissist and how they can fake therapists. If any of you know some therapists out there or couples counselors or people that are thinking about going to couples counseling with someone, definitely something to check out. What fans, Kat? The musician fans? I could see that. Well, there's all sorts of what do you call them? Groupies. Even a cover band has groupies sometimes. There you go. I appreciate it, Jewel. Smart men and emotionally healthy men are the hottest ones. Well, they say, Angela, men love with their eyes and women love with their ears. Kat, some women like to throw themselves at musicians. Oh, of course. Of course they do. Musicians probably more so than anyone. Musicians followed by actors. Sometimes some very charismatic politicians, maybe. Sometimes maybe some influencers in some cases. It's hard to say. Well, Jolly, about time to wrap this up here in a minute. I'm putting on my Cinderella routine. What was I going to say? Oh, so to recap the video, though. So the covert narcissist can fool the therapist because they will fake collaboration, and they're going to try to pretend like they're the best client because they want the therapist's validation. They often want to recruit the therapist to their side, and often they'll try to weaponize what the therapist says against the other partner. Covert narcissists will very often weaponize what they hear in therapy. They'll twist and distort the therapist's words. If you open up in front of the covert narcissist about your insecurities, vulnerabilities, or weaknesses, they will absolutely throw those in your face later and use them against you. You don't want that to happen either. But those are all things to pay attention to. So if you're a therapist out there, pay attention to that fake collaboration. And what I would say about that is, sometimes it's not the words that you'll see. You can sense it. You can sense something's not quite right. And when you sense something's not quite right, ask them to dig a little bit more. Ask them about their conflicts at home. How they talk about that would be pretty telling to me. And granted, victims can appear like they are not collaborating sometimes if they're shutting down, but that is not the same as not collaborating. Don't get that twisted either. Jared, do you think narcissists are capable of genuine love? Generally not. Narcissists use and exploit. What is your Cinderella routine? Ending by midnight. That's the Cinderella routine. Intellectual men are hot too. Let's see what he says. No, you don't want to. The closest thing you can get with a narcissist is if you just do as you're told. If you do as you're told, you never speak out, you just are like a servant, then it would be the relationship can go on. But just because a relationship goes on is not any measure of that relationship's health. And that's another thing people get confused a lot. They'll think, oh, they were together 20 years and there was a narcissist. It worked. It's like, did it work? Or was that other person just a doormat? Or that other person just a slave? Because you could argue, is that really working if one person's just a slave? No, I would say no. And no, the opposite of this is I've seen women really take on the mother role. And what happens in that dynamic is the guy's maybe an addict or some like maybe got mental health issues or a deadbeat in some way. And the woman just takes it upon herself to take care of him and mothers him basically. And is like, disciplines him as if it's the mother. Oh, you need to account your money to me because the guy will be fiscally irresponsible and the woman will be very responsible. And yet they'll still get married. And you'll think, why? Why does something like this happen? Why? Because you wouldn't think it would work out that way, right? But a lot of times what you see is when you look into that woman's background, that's in her background. She had a narcissistic parent. And this dynamic, she is replaying her childhood wounds, more than likely. And she is seeking out the love of the parent she wanted more love from. That's usually why you see that dynamic. And this woman, their trauma response is being hyper independent, hyper productive. I shouldn't say hyper independent. It's more like being hyper productive. And then they find these guys that are just hanging on by a thread. And you wouldn't think a woman in a good place would be attracted to someone like that. But sometimes they are. Sometimes they are. And it's because of those traumas at play, I would say. Kat has said they'll die old and alone. Makes sense. Yeah, but if they really want to try, here's the thing. The one time I've seen people change, and I'm always hesitant to say this because I don't want to give people false hope, But if someone has an addiction or a drug problem, and maybe there's a little bit of narcissism there, but not like a full-blown thing, they stop the drink, they stop the drug, and then they work the 12 steps of AA or NA, and they do it legitimately, honestly, genuinely, authentically. I have seen some people change in that case, but it's only because they did a major life transformation. It was not just words, it was a major life transformation. And if someone's going to go from being an active addict to a full-blown member of AA and NA, that is very similar to a religious conversion. Very in significance, it's the same. So unless you see something in scope and scale as significant as that, I would not even think about it. Not even think about it. But if you see something big changes, actual footsteps, and the actions of things, not just words, then maybe. But absence of that, no, don't even think about it. And for most people, I just say don't even think about it, because it's just not going to happen 9 times out of 10. But 1 time out of 100, there is a person that I've seen have a miraculous turnaround in AA and NA. And I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. Now, you could also say, well, Jared, unless you lived with them, you don't know what was going on behind closed doors. And I would say true. That is true. But from at least the outside, it looked a lot better. And here's the other part. Not just looked. Especially in a spiritual program, the energy can't be faked. So that's what I would go by too. The energy, it wasn't that narcissistic, toxic energy. So yes, you could say the appearances you can't necessarily trust. I agree. But the energy, like the eyes, they will not lie. Agreed, I've seen some change too, but not from the biggest narcs I know. Yeah, and you probably won't from the biggest narcs you know. I won't even pretend that they would. But given that one small case of if they were an alcoholic or an addict, they make a major life change, become really invested in NA and NA, get a sponsor, do 90 meetings in 90 days, write on the steps, pray. I mean, and honestly, what you see in that case is some of them become 12-step Nazis, which is perhaps better than what they were. But if they're truly a narcissist, sometimes what will happen is the narcissism will just infect what they're doing in 12 steps. But for the less severe ones, perhaps, there's a chance. There's a chance that with that major conversion, with that major life change, maybe they can do better. But again, never trust what you hear. Always trust what you see. Trust the actions and trust the energy first and foremost. That's my closing thought here on the evening. But Jewel, I appreciate you floating on over here from the old IG, from the old iGizzles. Because IG, the algorithm over there doesn't like me as much anymore. Can you believe it, those bastards? But it likes it when I do collaborative reels with people. But this is where all of those interviews are occurring. I put them here first. So this is a cool place for people to see them. And Facebook, the Facebook algorithm likes me a lot too. But Instagram, no. YouTube and Facebook are my favorites right now. So thanks for stopping on by, Jewel. I appreciate it. Bring a couple friends next time. Angela, thank you. Kat, Ellie, Jolly, Phil Bradley. I know you're in here somewhere. We'll have to give George a demerit for not being here again. Jewel. And I guess I scared away AD with my sleeveless shirt rant. But they've been in here before, so I think they get the humor. They get when I'm joshing around, right, Valerie? As I say, Phil Bradley is never late nor early, only on time. Thanks, Jolly. Jay Core, welcome, and good evening, and good night. Jewel of Aquarius says, thank you so much. It's been a great evening. My love to all in the chat. I love to hear it. Good to be here with you all. Always good to be here, Ellie. I will check out what the Pope says for you, and I'll give you my full report. Or I'll give you my thoughts. One of my next videos, I think, is going to be about autism, because autism, I'm someone who's on the spectrum, and there's been a lot of chat about the old spectrum recently. So I'm going to give a wizard's 2 cents on what he's seeing about this stuff, which I think maybe, if you guys like that topic, I think you'll find it amusing and interesting. My thoughts, because it's someone that has personal experience with it, not just freeballing. And as usual, I have a pretty nuanced view about it. So, all right, Jewel and everyone, I appreciate you all being here. And Jay Core, you'll have to tell us more about yourself next time. I don't think I've ever seen you here, but I'm glad you're here. So with that, over and out, everybody. Phil Bradley, definitely not late. That's how you come here. Maybe tomorrow night, Ellie, even. Tomorrow or Sunday, but maybe tomorrow night. Definitely one or the other, but we'll see what day it is. I'm thinking tomorrow. But all right, all. Have a great rest of your night.